Welcome back to the deep dive. We are doing something a little bit different today. Usually when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about, fiber optics or the power grid or maybe the supply chains that keep our Amazon packages arriving on time.
Right, the hard stuff, the physical grid.
Exactly. But today we are looking at social infrastructure, and specifically we are looking at a piece of social infrastructure that has been around for thousands of years, but is getting a very futuristic, high-tech reevaluation.
It is fascinating because usually when this topic comes up in tech circles, it's dismissed as archaic, right? As something from a bygone era.
Completely. But the source material today flips that narrative on its head.
It really does.
We are dissecting a post from the Netizen blog dated January 25, 2026. The title is "The Church as a Community Engine, Worship, Belonging, and the Exercise of Being Human."
And that title alone tells you a lot. An engine.
It does, and I want to be clear right off the bat. We aren't doing a theology seminar here. We aren't debating the metaphysics of the afterlife or anything like that.
No, not at all.
We are looking at this through the lens of functionality. The author, who is clearly deep in the agentic AI and future tech space, makes this incredibly bold claim. We think of churches as places for salvation, but their primary functional purpose, the reason they work as a system, is actually community building.
Exactly. And to understand why a tech futurist is writing about this in 2026, you really have to look at the context, the stuff gleaned from the sidebar of the blog.
Right.
This isn't a pastor writing a sermon. This is someone looking at what the source calls the age of abundance. We are living in this moment where AI and robotics are starting to solve material scarcity. The cost of goods is plummeting. Logistics are automated.
Everything is available all the time?
All the time. But the source argues that as that material scarcity vanishes, a new and maybe much more dangerous scarcity is merging.
The scarcity of belonging, it's the paradox of the age, isn't it?
It really is.
We have infinite connectivity, infinite content, automated delivery of everything we could possibly need to survive, yet all the data shows we are fracturing. We're becoming more isolated.
The source calls it the age of abundance, prophesied in scriptures, but suggests that without a kind of manual for living together, that abundance just leads to isolation.
That is the core friction. If you don't need your neighbor to help you raise a barn anymore or harvest crops or even, borrow a cup of sugar because a drone just dropped one off.
Why talk to them at all? The economic necessity of community it's evaporated.
So we have to find a new reason, or maybe rediscover an old reason to actually interact with each other.
And that's the engine the author is trying to describe.
So the roadmap for today is pretty robust. We are going to look at 4 main pillars from this piece. First, this really wild reframing of the Ten Commandments as basically a sociology textbook.
Alas, I love that part.
Second, the public health emergency of isolation. And the source uses some, frankly, terrifying stats there.
Oh, yeah.
Third, the 3 kinds of exercise required for a human to function, which includes a very surprising take on what social exercise actually is. And finally, how this ancient structure might be an antidote to modern polarization algorithms.
It's a lot to unpack. So let's start with that first pillar, the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I saw this in the outline, I kind of braced myself for a Sunday school lecture, thou shalt not. It usually feels very top-down, very authoritarian. Do this, don't do that, or else.
And that's the transactional view of religion, right? And frankly, it's the view that most secular people, and I'd argue even many religious people, hold.
What do you mean by transactional?
The idea that worship is a transaction. I pay homage, I follow the rules, and in exchange, this divine entity is pleased and, gives me good weather or a ticket to heaven.
Right. It's a celestial vending machine. Input obedience, output blessing.
Exactly. But the source argues this is a complete and total misunderstanding of the mechanism. It posits that worship is transformational, not transactional. It says, and I'm quoting here, worship is not about divine flattery. It is about human formation.
I stopped on that line. Human formation. It completely changes the direction of the arrow. It's not about sending something up to God. It's about what comes back down into you during the process.
Think about it psychologically. There's a mechanism the source calls the reflection mechanism.
Yeah.
We essentially become what we admire, what we focus on.
Okay.
If you worship or obsess over material wealth, your personality shifts. You become more transactional yourself, maybe more greedy, more anxious about loss.
Sure, that makes sense.
So the source argues that the act of worshiping a God who is defined by things like patience and justice and love, it isn't for God's benefit. God doesn't have an ego problem.
Right.
It's to reflect those qualities back onto the worshiper, and you're literally shaping your own character by orienting yourself toward a specific ideal week after week after week.
So, okay, if we apply that sociological lens to the commandments, specifically the first four, which are usually seen as the purely religious ones, like have no other gods and keep the Sabbath, how does that build a community? Because have no other gods sounds like a simple demand for loyalty, not a blueprint for a neighborhood.
Well, let's break it down. Imagine a society where everyone has a different highest value, a
Yeah.
different God. You worship power, I worship intellect, someone else worships money, another person worships pleasure.
Okay, that sounds a lot like modern society.
It does, doesn't it? And when push comes to shove, when there's a crisis, we have no shared moral center. We're all pulling in different directions based on our private gods. There's no consensus on what's ultimately important.
It's chaos.
It's chaos. The command to have no other gods isn't just about theology. It creates a shared reality, a unified moral compass for the entire community. It's an alignment protocol.
An alignment protocol. I like that. It's a tech term for a theological concept.
Exactly. It minimizes social friction. And then look at the Sabbath. That's even more practical and sociological.
How so?
In the gig economy of 2026, or the AI-driven 24/7 productivity cycle, time has completely lost its structure. We work whenever. We rest whenever.
Or rest at all.
Right. But from a community perspective, think about this. If I rest on Tuesday, and you rest on Friday, and someone else rests on Sunday morning, we can never actually stop together.
We never overlap.
We can never have a collective exhale. The Sabbath isn't just a rule about being pious. The source argues it's a synchronization tool. It forces the entire community to pause simultaneously. And that shared rhythm, that shared rest, is the foundation of trust and communal identity.
It differentiates a team from just a bunch of freelancers sharing a co-working space. Freelancers are alone, together. But a community has a synchronized clock.
That's a great way to put it. And the source has this pretty stark warning. It says that without these synchronization tools, without a shared object of value and a shared sense of time, society doesn't just become free, it fractures.
It just dissolves.
It dissolves into millions of isolated individuals who, in the end, essentially worship themselves. And a society of self-worshipers is incapable of sacrifice, which means it's incapable of building a durable community.
Wow. That feels like a direct diagnosis of the current moment. We've maximized individual freedom, but we've lost the connective tissue,
I think so.
which leads us right into the second major point, the public health emergency.
Yeah, this section of the source was heavy.
It kicks off with this statistic that 1 in 3 Americans lives alone. And it's not framing this as some cool, Sex in the City lifestyle choice.
Not at all.
It frames it as a structural collapse of the family and community unit.
We have to look at the biology here, which the source does. Humans are social primates. We are not in any way evolved to be solitary creatures. When a primate is isolated from the troop, its body goes into a high alert threat state.
Fight or flight.
Constant fight or flight. Cortisol spikes. Inflammation rises. Your immune system gets suppressed. And the source makes this direct, shocking comparison between the health impact of loneliness and smoking.
I couldn't believe that line. Equivalent to several packs a day.
Yes. And think about the sheer amount of energy we put into public health regarding smoking. We tax it, we ban it in public places, we put huge warning labels on it. We understand fundamentally that smoking destroys the physical body.
Right, it's a settled issue.
But we treat loneliness as a feeling.
Right.
We treat it as a mental health issue or just a sad mood you can get over. The source is arguing, no, this is physical damage. This is a physiological condition. If you are chronically isolated, you are dying faster, period.
It calls loneliness a void. And there's this ominous line. If churches do not step into this void, something else will.
Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human soul. The need for belonging is as fundamental as the need for food or water. If you don't get it from a healthy source, like a community that's focused on forgiveness and growth, you will absolutely get it from an unhealthy source.
What are the alternatives the source is pointing to? What are those something else's?
It alludes to the rise of radicalization, especially online. Think about extremist groups on any side of the spectrum. What do they offer, first and foremost?
Belonging. Instant identity.
Instant, intense belonging. Join us, and you are part of the elite. You know the truth.
And here's the group of people we all hate together.
Exactly. That's the key distinction. Healthy community is usually defined by what it loves together. Unhealthy, void-filling community is almost always defined by what it hates together. It binds people through shared rage or shared enemies.
So political tribalism, brand cults, conspiracy groups.
They are all filling the same hole that the church used to fill, but the nutrition they provide is toxic. It's like eating junk food when you're starving. It fills you up for a minute, but it's killing you slowly.
So the argument is that the church has this, I guess, special obligation, not just to save souls for the afterlife, but to keep society from tearing itself apart right now, in the here and now.
A civic duty, almost.
But here's the rub, and we've all seen this. We've all seen churches try to fix this by, trying to be cool.
Laughs, though. The relevance trap.
The
I know it well.
fog machines, the laser lights, the pastors, and $500 sneakers. It can feel like a really bad marketing campaign, and the source is very, very critical of that approach.
It explicitly says growth isn't about spectacle. It isn't about marketing. It is about the mechanics of intimacy. And this is where it pivots away from the Sunday service, the big show, and focuses entirely on what it calls the small group.
And it gets really specific with the numbers here, which I found fascinating. It lists circles of 3, 5, 7, or 9. Why those specific small numbers? Why not 20 or 50?
It comes back to cognitive load and human scale.
Yeah.
There's a concept in anthropology called Dunbar's number, which basically puts a ceiling on how many stable social relationships we can maintain.
Right, it's around 150 people.
Around 150. But there are much smaller, more intimate circles within that. You cannot be truly vulnerable with 50 people. You can't intimately know the life story of 100 people. If a church has 1,000 people in an auditorium, that's not a community. That is an audience. It's a crowd.
A crowd is just a bunch of people watching the same event.
Precisely. To turn that crowd into a community, you have to break it down into what the source calls human-sized units. A group of 7 people is small enough that you notice when someone is missing. You know their spouse's name. You know if their mom is sick. You know if they just lost their job. That is where the actual safety net function of community happens.
The source calls the small group the unit of growth, which is an interesting metric. It's not about attendance numbers. A church isn't truly growing if the crowd just gets bigger. It's only growing if the number of deeply connected small groups increases.
And that leads to this other brilliant point about the first few minutes. The source argues that the theology of the sermon matters far less to a newcomer than what happens in the first 3 minutes after they walk through the door.
This resonated with me so much. You walk into any new place, a party, a job, anywhere, your guard is up, you're scanning for threats, for social cues, you just feel awkward.
It's that fight or flight response again. Your whole nervous system is on high alert.
Yeah.
If you walk in and no one acknowledges you, or if the welcome feels synthetic like a greeter just reading a script, your brain tags the location as unsafe or indifferent.
And you check out.
You're gone. It doesn't matter how eloquent the speaker is 30 minutes later. You've already subconsciously decided you don't belong there.
But I liked the caveat the source adds to this. It says, chemistry is real.
That was refreshing, wasn't it? It felt so honest.
It really was. Because there is this immense pressure in religious or community circles to just love everyone equally and instantly. But the source admits that, you know what? You won't click with everyone, and that is okay.
It distinguishes between what it calls forced uniformity and organic alignment.
Unpack that.
Forced uniformity is cult-like. It demands that everyone acts the same, thinks the same, and pretends to like each other. It's top-down and controlling. Organic alignment, on the other hand, means we create the space for connection, we are welcoming to everyone, but we allow the actual deep bonds to form naturally based on shared interests or life stages.
So maybe you connect with the guy who also loves sci-fi or the woman who enjoys gardening. You let the chemistry do the work.
Exactly. The goal isn't to force everyone to be best friends. It's to create an environment where everyone has the opportunity to find their people.
Now, I want to pivot to this section on the 3 kinds of exercise. This is where the netizen tech futurist perspective really shines because it blends biology, theology, and this ever-present AI context. The source claims human flourishing requires 3 distinct types of exercise: physical, mental, spiritual, and social.
And notice the word exercise. It's not 3 kinds of states. It implies resistance. It implies effort. None of these things happen by default. You have to work at them.
Let's start with the physical. I loved the Nikola Tesla anecdote. I had never heard that before.
It's such a great image, right? Tesla, this towering genius inventor, getting old, sitting in his bed, and consciously, deliberately wiggling his toes every day.
Why? What was the point?
The source uses this to talk about inertia. The laws of physics say a body at rest tends to stay at rest, And our biological default, especially now, is to conserve energy, to sit on the couch.
Especially in this age of abundance where we don't have to chase our food comes to us.
Right, so movement must be an act of will. The source argues that even tiny movements like wiggling toes or doing facial exercises to look younger are a declaration of agency. You are telling your body, I am in charge here, not inertia. Movement, however small, is still movement.
It validates simple things too. It calls walking a transformative habit, and I love this description. Walking is like swimming, but gentler.
And it connects the physical to the mental. The line, books can become dumbbells, is about integrating the body back into the life of the mind, refusing to see them as separate, reclaiming wasted time, like exercising while you watch TV.
Which brings us to the second type, mental and spiritual exercise. And here, the source identifies the enemy, and it's a great name for it, the monkey mind.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
If the body's core problem is inertia, it wants to stop. The mind's core problem is momentum. It just won't stop.
The monkey mind is that incessant internal chatter, the anxiety loop, the constant replay of yesterday's mistake, the rehearsal for tomorrow's argument.
It's exhausting.
So the exercise here is the opposite of physical exercise. It's stillness, the primary method being deep breathing. But then the source goes into this funny, very specific critique of how some Christians view deep breathing.
Yes, I know exactly what it's talking about. It notes that some believers get oddly defensive about breath work because they associate it with Eastern mysticism or Buddhism. They think it's somehow unchristian.
The author just asks this simple, devastating question. What is unchristian about breathing?
It highlights how we can politicize our own biology. But the source anchors it right back to the biblical text. Be still and know that I am God. You literally cannot be still if your physiology is in panic mode. You have to regulate the body to quiet the mind so you can hear anything else.
And this is where the AI argument really lands. There's this crucial realization the source pushes for. You are not your body. You are not your mind. You are a soul that has a body and a mind. Why is that distinction the key to surviving the AI age?
This is maybe the most brilliant part of the entire piece.
Yeah.
If you define your core identity by your mind, by your intelligence, your ability to process data, to write code, to calculate, you are in a losing battle.
Because the machines are coming for those jobs.
They're not just coming for them, they're already better at them. Agentic AI is already faster than you at many cognitive tasks. In 5 years, it will be infinitely faster. If humanity's claim to uniqueness is we're just smart meat, then we are on the brink of obsolescence.
So if we compete on the grounds of mind, we lose.
We lose badly. But if we define ourselves as souls, as centers of moral agency, of consciousness, of divine connection, of love, then AI is no longer a rival. It's just a tool. A powerful calculator doesn't have a soul. GPT-7 won't have a soul. By centering the soul, we preserve human uniqueness in a world of superhuman intelligence.
So the spiritual exercise isn't just about feeling peaceful. It's about asserting your ontological status against the machine.
That's a very academic way to put it, but yes,
Right.
it's remembering what you are so you don't get confused by the powerful tools you use.
Which leads to the third category, social exercise. And I just love that it calls it exercise.
It reframes the whole thing. It treats a good conversation like a gym workout. The source says social exercise is simple but demanding.
We usually think of socializing as leisure. I'm going to hang out. But the source says, no, real deep connection is work.
Of course it is. Because our default setting is narcissism. We're all the main characters in our own movies. To sit across from someone, especially someone very different from you, and genuinely ask, how are you doing? And then to shut up and listen.
That's the hard part.
That is resistance training for the ego. It's so hard.
It even mentions a specific book, 100 Questions That Lead to Understanding. It suggests we literally need a manual for how to talk to each other again.
It implies we have atrophied. Our social muscles have weakened. We've forgotten how to ask questions that aren't just setups for us to tell our own stories. The workout, it says, is taking a genuine interest in other people.
And the payoff for all this work is what the source calls contagious health.
Right. Humans are deeply, instinctively attracted to health. If a community is actually doing these 3 exercises, if people are walking together, listening to each other, breathing together, it just radiates a kind of vitality. And the source argues that this vitality is the best recruitment tool in the world. You don't need a billboard or a marketing campaign. You just need to be genuinely healthy. People will find you.
But let's be real for a second. People are annoying.
Inevitably, yes.
And groups of people are even more annoying. So Section 5 is all about conflict. It says, wherever humans gather, misunderstandings happen. It doesn't promise a utopia.
No, and that's crucial for its credibility. A utopia is a fantasy.
Mhm.
A real community is a reality, and reality is messy. The source contrasts the modern response to conflict with the church's intended response.
And the modern response is the block button. It's cancel culture.
It's avoidance. You disagreed with me, or you made a joke I didn't like, or you voted for the wrong person, so you were dead to me. It's brutally efficient. It cleans up your social media feed.
But it leaves you completely alone in an echo chamber.
The church response, according to the source, is conversation, healing fissures, working out kinks, forgiveness, and fresh starts.
Yeah.
It's the hard, messy, relational work of reconciliation. And the source calls this the most countercultural witness the church has to offer right now. In a world that is ruthless and disposes of people for the smallest infraction, a community that offers grace and second chances is radical.
It also frames diversity as something to be stewarded, not solved. I like that word choice.
I love the alien perspective. An alien landing here might think humanity views diversity as a bug, not a feature, as a problem to be solved.
Right.
But if you look at the Amazon rainforest, is the incredible biodiversity there a problem? No, it's the definition of the ecosystem. It's the source of its resilience and strength. The source argues we need to stop trying to make everyone the same, which is that forced uniformity again, and start stewarding the differences.
And the biggest threat to that stewardship right now is polarization. The source is very clear on the cause. Rage is monetized.
The algorithms on social media are not designed for understanding. They're designed for engagement. And the most engaging emotion is outrage. So they show you the worst, most extreme version of those people to keep you angry and keep you scrolling.
So what's the antidote?
The source says it's old-fashioned face-to-face meetings. The small group is the only way to defeat the algorithm.
Because you can't dehumanize someone when you're sharing a pizza with them.
You really can't. The algorithm relies on abstraction. It relies on you imagining a grotesque caricature of a liberal or a conservative. But when that caricature becomes Bob, who helped you shovel your driveway last winter, the abstraction collapses. The rage loses its fuel because it's replaced by a real human relationship.
So the church, or any healthy community, becomes a kind of anti-algorithm machine.
That's a fantastic way to put it. It forces you back into the messy, complicated, and beautiful nuance of physical reality.
Okay, let's talk about the structure that has to support all this. Section 6 is about volunteers and bureaucracy. And this felt like a warning to every organization on the planet, not just churches.
It's the classic life cycle of institutions, isn't it? You start as a movement, you become a business, and you end up as a bureaucracy. The source warns that as churches grow, they inevitably form committees. And committees are where the relational soul of an organization often goes to die.
Yes. It has this line, a committee should feel like a small group you want to belong to. That sounds like a complete oxymoron.
It sounds impossible, but the logic is sound. If the core product of the church is relationship and belonging, then the administration of it cannot be anti-relational. You can't run a factory of love using the management techniques of the DMV.
It also compares the church to college, which I thought was interesting. It says it teaches you two main things, how to learn and how to get along with people.
The dual discipline. The Bible provides the curriculum. It's described as serious, demanding, beautiful literature. And the small groups provide the lab work, the practical application of getting along with difficult people.
And it points out the career benefits, which I thought was a very pragmatic 2026 kind of touch.
It is intensely practical. Think about the soft skills required to lead a volunteer team. You can't fire them. You can't dock their pay. You can't threaten them. You have to lead by pure influence, by empathy, and by shared vision.
That's a great point.
If you can successfully manage the church parking team on a rainy Easter Sunday, you can manage any corporate project team in the world. It's an incredible free training ground for real leadership.
I want to deep dive just a bit more into the Bible study aspect mentioned in Section 7. The source brings up this idea of the co-reader. This was a bit more theological, but I think it explains the longevity of the text.
The source argues that reading the Bible isn't like reading a technical manual or a novel. The idea is that when you read the Bible, the Holy Spirit reads it with you.
Okay, from a purely secular or psychological perspective, how do we interpret that?
You can think of it as a living text. Why is it that you can read the same passage at age 20 after a breakup, and then at age 50 after a parent has passed away, and get two completely different profound things from it?
Well, the secular critic would say, because you changed.
Right. And the theological view presented here isn't denying that. It's adding a layer. He says, the co-reader, the Spirit, knows you changed, knows what you need right now, and highlights the specific layer of meaning that will meet you where you are.
So it turns the act of reading into a dynamic conversation rather than just static data consumption.
And doing that in a group is vital because my co-reader might highlight something about forgiveness in a passage while yours highlights something about justice. And that friction, that debate over meaning, is part of the mental exercise. It forces you to consider other perspectives and deepens everyone's understanding.
Finally, we get to the happiness tonic, section 8, the prescription for misery.
Prescribed service. It's the oldest trick in the book for a reason, because it works.
If you meet an unhappy person, prescribe service. It's so direct.
Misery, unhappiness, depression, it's almost always a collapse inward, a hyper-focus on the self. I am thinking about my pain, my injustice, my lack, my problems. Service forcibly turns the lens outward. You cannot be stuck in a rumination loop about yourself while you are actively helping someone else carry a heavy box. Your brain just can't do both at once.
But the source adds a really important constraint. Do it without charging. Why is the money part so critical?
Because money turns it into a transaction, and the transaction ends the relationship. If I pay you $50 to shovel my snow, we are even. The debt is settled. We are separate individuals again.
There's a quote in there, money settles the score and separates them.
That line is profound economics. If you shovel my snow for free as a gift, it creates a bond. It creates gratitude. It creates a gift economy. And the source is basically saying the church is trying to operate as a gift economy in the middle of a hyper-capitalist market economy.
And that's why it feels so weird to us. We aren't used to getting things of value that we didn't pay for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it's the ultimate antidote to the age of abundance. In a world where everything can be bought and sold, the only thing that has real lasting value is that which is given freely with no expectation of return.
So, bringing this all together, the source is painting this vivid picture of the church, not as a relic of the past, but as a community engine. It's a machine designed to produce belonging, resilience, and human formation.
And it suggests that in 2026, with agentic AI rising and society fracturing, this ancient machine might just be the most futuristic technology we have. We don't need to invent a new app to cure loneliness. We need to rediscover the ancient practice of sitting in a circle and listening.
It's the age of abundance paradox in full. If technology solves material scarcity, community and belonging become the only scarcity left.
And the institutions that can solve that scarcity will be the most important, most valuable ones in the entire 21st century.
Wow, that is a lot to think about. I think I'm going to go find my small group and maybe wiggle my toes.
Don't forget to breathe.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We'll see you next time.